success. I'm sure I spent far more money on the website than I ever really made. There are a lot of people calling themselves nutritionists who may or may not have actually had sort of training in it. And it's really finding a niche is the most important thing to sort of stand out in the competition. It's not something I'm passionate about. I'm not showing up for clients. It's not going to work.
Yeah, so you've built a business around your passion for its nutrition and wellness, right? So what sort of inspired you to take that step into this business? And what did you do before that?
So, I mean, I've always been a bit of a serial entrepreneur, I suppose. I never think of myself that way, but I started a little online business when I was 17, I suppose. Yeah. I was making lots of craft things. I'd make, greetings cards and all sorts of different things. That was just a bit of a hobby, and I started a website for that. And yeah, that was fun for a while, but then cheap stuff from abroad became sort of the norm. So make a living doing that, and I'd always had a passion for sort of for herbalism because it was something I did with my grandparents and parents. So I trained as a herbalist, um, and at the same time I was also I trained to make natural skincare because I have very sensitive skin. I have to make all of my own skincare. So I then set up a little business selling natural skincare online, which I do still do. But it's like a little side hobby, really, because it's all about being local and sustainable. But then, yeah, when 2020 came along, I couldn't practice herbalism anymore because at the time you had to do it in person. So I thought, right, what train now? So I trained as a nutritionist. And now I very much sort of combine the training I've had in the sort of the skincare and skin health. I combine that with the nutrition. So I mostly focus on skin nutrition, cellular rejuvenation is my thing.
Nice. That's a nice journey. So did you do any sort of market research before this, or was it just that this is something you really wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, for my skincare business, I very much did that. I planned out, or some might say procrastinated over for years before I finally actually sort of launched it. With the new nutrition, it was more sort of something I kind of fell into, and then I found when I told people I was training as a nutritionist, they all sort of thought, "Oh, great! I need to lose weight," and that was the big thing that everybody wanted help with weight loss. So I
Mm.
initially started sort of focusing on that in particular, um, and because that seemed to be what most people wanted, so I thought, well, that's what I should be doing. But I just found it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. So in the end, I felt, well, no, actually, I'm gonna focus on what really sort of lights me up, what I'm passionate about, and I'll go from there. So I almost did it the other way around. I then found the market for what I wanted to do.
Yeah, nice. So followed your passion rather than just numbers and market trends, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good. So how did you get your first clients? Did you already have what it looks sort of friends and family, or and like how did you build trust and get people to sort of buy into your approach?
Yeah, so obviously during my training I had to find some sort of case study clients. So I started off with friends and family, and then they sort of recommended people to me. Um I also obviously did the grind of social media, constantly posting stuff on
Mhm.
Instagram, and some do TikTok now as well. um I'm not a huge fan of doing that. I just find it takes so long to sort of build trust with people, but that, over time eventually that starts to bring in some people. I also found that one of the best ways was just collaborating with other businesses. So, and to get together and all put together a sort of bundle of free gifts to get people onto my email list that way. I'm actually putting together a summit at the moment, which is going to be this virtual summit with all these different sort of wellness professionals all kind of coming together so we can grow our audiences that way. So that's really been my main ways of sort of gradually building that up. And obviously, once you get a few clients, you start to get recommendations, which is tends to be the best way to get them.
Yeah, word of mouth, right? But that
Yeah.
summit sounds really interesting. So are you the organizer by yourself or yeah? Nice.
Yeah.
When is that taking place?
And so it's going to go out in May. But I'm doing interviews at the moment. We've got currently 30, I think,
Nice.
people taking through it. So it's going to take a long time to sort of edit it all. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Really interesting. Have you done anything like that before, or is this your first sort of venture into that?
Yeah, I've participated in other people's ones, and I sort of thought, oh, this is something I'd actually really enjoy doing myself. So I thought, why not? Let's do it.
I think that's a really good way to establish yourself as also as a an authority in your field, right? To be the organizer of these things, and like the networking thing is also perfect. So that's really cool. And all, so you're gonna have talks and people coming in and talks, well, virtually of course, but and they're all about wellness, right? Is it some more? Is it even niche down further than that, or is it wellness in general?
Yeah. So some are talking more generally, sort of about nutrition, or some people are exercise, sort of fitness trainers. And then I've got ones looking at very specific niches. People very focusing specifically on sort of menopause health for women. We've got other people dealing with sort of men's emotional health. So we've got all different topics within it.
That's perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to have that down in the comments or in the description as well, so people can just sort of click on it if they want to find more. That's really cool. So maybe I'm sort of projecting here a little bit, but I think that, well, I think that a lot of founders seem to struggle with like imposter syndrome, and maybe especially in wellness, if I had to guess. Like, did you face that? And if so, how did you like push through it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it is a really common thing, particularly in the sort of wellness field. People get into it because they really like the idea of sort of helping people. And it becomes very difficult to then, especially when you start sort of charging people, you feel
Yeah.
awkward, and that shouldn't be doing that. That you're not really expert enough. You want to help people, but it's really, yeah, it is difficult. Particularly to charge for that. Um, and I think, yeah, I often have to sort of remind myself of, I have done years of training, obviously qualifications. I've got all this experience working with people, and you do have to sort of to value that. Um, and yeah, it can feel difficult. And I think sometimes, yeah, that comes up a lot when I'm sort of, setting prices for things.
Yeah.
You have all these pricing models of, how you value it and whatever. But in the end, it comes down to sort of what do I feel comfortable with? And you kind of get that sort of almost gut feeling, if you like. But yeah,
Yeah, it's
but
tricky.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Do you find it hard to like ask money from or like have friends and family pay for your services? Or is that sort of natural to you?
Yeah. I mean, that can be particularly difficult, particularly when I was training. Obviously, I did a lot of free consultations because I wasn't qualified, and it does get awkward when they sort of come back. Oh yeah, actually, you helped me with that. Can you do that again? Well, actually, I do sort of charge for this now. Yeah, it is difficult, but I think most people do sort of they understand.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. So is this like a crowded space that you're in? Like, do you have a lot of competition with other companies and people doing this?
To a certain extent, I think. I mean, nutrition is one of those strange things. There are a lot of people calling themselves nutritionists who may or may not have actually had sort of training in it. So
Yeah.
there is that sort of way of sort of setting yourself out. But also, you just really need to find a niche. And that's why I've particularly gone into the sort of skin nutrition, because it's something not many people really focus on, which is a shame, really, because it's actually really, really important because I always say the skin acts as sort of an early warning indicator for what's happening at a deeper level in the body. So it can actually be really crucial. So yeah, it's a deal. As really finding a niche is the most important thing to sort of stand out in the competition.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so that's your way of standing out, right? Is finding a bit that's more niched. Yeah, that's really cool. It's really nice. So for other, because the audience here is mainly like founders and entrepreneurs and people doing side hustle businesses and everything. If there's someone else around the world here that wants to go into coaching or building a like a wellness business. Do you have any suggestions for something they should focus on first, or like maybe it's just one thing they should focus on, or any other lessons you learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different sort of areas that you could go into within it. I think the most important thing is to find what you're really passionate about, because when you start working with clients, if you're just doing it, and it becomes like a job, it comes across, and you're not gonna really help people. So I think the most important thing is to find the area that really really lights you up, and then sort of get more training in that, make sure that that really is your passion, and then go for that. Yeah.
So I mean, we talked about pricing before, and that it's hard to set the right prices probably. Do you have any advice on that, like how to set the correct prices?
Yeah, I mean, it does have to be something that you feel comfortable with. As I say, I mean, if you're feeling awkward every time you tell somebody your prices, it's that's not going to come across very well. Um, Obviously, you can look at people, doing similar things to you. Obviously, it does depend, because you're going to be different to them, and you have to sort of very much think about what you know the value that you're giving. Um, and by if you put as much of that value, sort of much value, into sort of packages that you're doing. I mean, certainly with coaching, I don't recommend doing it as a sort of hourly rate, because um yeah, it doesn't work terribly well. You're doing the classic trading time for money. Putting together whole sort of packages, and then packing them with value so that you feel comfortable charging more for them, that's usually the best way to go.
Yeah, sounds good. Stupid question here for me. That's not really into skincare or skin nutrition. Like skincare to me is at least a little bit more obvious, but skin nutrition might not be. So how can you measure success on the client side? Like how do they know if they if it's good for them or not? Is that something you can do in a like quantitative way or something?
Yeah, I mean, so very often I work with people who have skin conditions like acne, eczema, psoriasis, all of those things, and nutrition can be a really good way of actually healing those things. Often people have tried all the sort of lotions and potions and they didn't work, and actually by changing their diet they can get better. And I do know this from experience, having done it myself. But
The best kind of
also,
yeah.
it's slowing down the process of aging. We often think that it's just natural that we'll get wrinkles and then get ill when we get old, and it's not inevitable at all, and it can very much be slowed down, potentially even reversed.
Yeah, that sounds very, very visually appealing to maybe on social media to post that and says as well. So like the before and after photos could potentially be quite clear, and it's a pretty good value proposition. So what does a typical day for you look like as both a founder and a nutritionist? Like how do you balance between these two roles? Does it take up all of your days, or like how do you balance that?
Obviously, I get just sort of get started with a nice healthy breakfast, and then I do spend more time than I would necessarily like stuck in front of my laptop, but that's inevitable when running your own business.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I see clients online, so I'll have client meetings, different times. So I see a few clients one to one, but I mostly do sort of group programs. So I have people in groups, which means I can structure specific calls at specific times, which leaves me quite a lot of free time. So I block my time out. So I'll have sort of admin days. I spend a couple of hours on emails, and I like to be quite strict at sort of have a cut off time when I'm like, right, that's it. I'm not doing work after this time, because living on my own, well, with this cat, it is obviously it's too easy to spend too much time working on your business, and it kind of becomes your whole sort of life. So we have to have a sort of a cut off where we're no, we're on to social things now, or we're just gonna curl up and watch a film or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense. So you work from your home, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I did that before as well, but I found it to be extremely hard to like distinguish between private life and work life, and I just worked way too much. So I had to actually get an office, so I had to leave the house and go to my office, which is not far from my home, just for a change of environment. So I had like the distinction there between I'm working and now I'm actually off. And that really helped me because I was really bad at that.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that.
So, what's been the toughest lesson that you've learned as a founder?
I would say probably very much that, some things you do just have to kind of figure out for yourself, no matter how much advice you sort of get. I mean, I did some of all these sort of business courses
Yeah.
and so on. But I mean, I mentioned earlier about going into the sort of the niche that I thought other people wanted me to do, and how that didn't really, it just didn't really work because I wasn't something I was passionate about. And I think, I had all these people telling me, well, you have to do market research and you do you go where the market is. And I just thought, yeah, but if it's not something I'm passionate about, I'm not showing up for clients. So it's not going to work. And I think that's something I had to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. So, you mentioned that you're a serial entrepreneur. So do you want to count that the sort of the crafting side and maybe you have other businesses as well? But basically my question is, have you had any failed businesses?
Yeah, with doing, I mean, when I started off doing all the crafts and things, I mostly originally I sold them at craft fairs, and then I had far too much fun creating creating a website to sort of do it online, and it was God, it was a long time ago now, and yeah, I mean, of course you had to spend a whole load of money on hosting it and stuff, and I think I sold like one or two things on it, and that was to members of my family. I mean, it was a silly thing to do because it just didn't make sense to do it online. Craft fairs made so much more sense for a while, at least, until yeah, they sort of died as well. So yeah, I would hardly say that was a success. I'm sure I spent far more money on the website than I ever really made. From selling crafts, but it was fun at the time, and I learned then from that not to set up all the website and do all of these things before you actually have a sort of some sort of market to sell to.
Yeah, yeah, I've done the same thing multiple times, like not doing any market research at all, just find something that thought would be really interesting, spend way too much time and money on it, and then nothing really happened. So yeah, been there, done that as well. But that's good because I'm interested in learning this specific thing, which I think is really hard to answer. So, but a question that often comes up to me is just like how do you know when to keep grinding and when to actually quit? Like how do you know? Do you have any input on that? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is a really tough question. Especially because you get so much conflicting advice from other people. I mean, I always get my mother is so wonderful. Anything I do, well, I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, well, I think you should quit while you're ahead. Get out of that. No, she's a wonderful optimist, my mother. Um,
Yeah.
but you'll have, yes. Then of course you get the other people saying, no, you keep going. You can do this. I think to a certain extent you have to sort of decide in advance, almost, like, this is okay, this is a goal, and do some research, make sure the goal is realistic, and then put a time frame on it. And I suppose you have to kind of be strict. Okay, if I haven't got this number of sales or this number of inquiries or whatever by this time, then I have to sort of accept this isn't going to work. But I mean, there'll always be people who talk, oh no, they kept going, and then yeah, it finally worked. 18 months later. Well, yeah, I think you have to kind of be realistic about, well, yeah, can you actually afford to take that chance?
Yeah, yeah, that's some good advice. Yeah, because those are the ones that you read about, the ones that sort of struggled for 7 years and eventually, they had some success and then they made, $100 million, and then that's what you read about. But you don't read about the other like 8,000 people that just didn't find that success. Yeah,
Mm,
they're not going to
exactly.
write about it. So it's easy to get, I think, pulled into that sort of fantasy of like, oh, eventually it's going to work. But then, yeah, like, how do you know when to stop? I think that's really hard. So in my experience, and we'll see if you agree, but I think that entrepreneurship has its ups and downs. Like it's not always just positives. What keeps you motivated and like when things gets tough? It's just because you're passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely days. particularly, you know, if you sort of like create a new program or something, you think it's going to do really really well, and then suddenly nobody buys it. You know, we all have those times. But I think what I often do is I go back to, you know, it's important to have communities. Like I have, you know, there's various Facebook groups, things like that, of other people from both from where I trained, and various sort of, you know, business groups where you can always, you know, have a vent and you've got people there who sort of act as your cheerleaders. So that's really important, you know, finding people who can, you know, sort of pick you up in those times, and also just kind of, yeah, reminding yourself why it is that you do this, and you know what the alternative is. You know, grinding away in an office or whatever, working for somebody else, which personally doesn't appeal. So that's always a good motivation.
Yeah, that's good. So are you in Facebook groups? Is in those groups, are those sort of wellness groups in general, or are they more entrepreneur groups with other founders, or both?
Yeah, so I sort of do both. Let's say from where I, you know, from where I trained and things like that, there's lots of little offshoot groups from
Mm,
that.
yeah.
And then there's sort of business ones where we're all in different businesses. It's important to find the right ones though, because there's thousands and thousands of them, and I've, you know, you've been in a few of them, and sometimes you just don't quite sort of vibe with the people in it. Um, I've found a few now that I really really like, even though we're all in completely unrelated fields. Um, but we just, you know, we get on, and that's really good. You always know if you're having a rough day. You can always sort of post about it there, and people will come up with words of wisdom or whatever it might be. Just sympathy, you know.
Yeah, some place to vent that. That's good. Get that out of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the ones I found a couple of Facebook groups, but usually the ones that I find are just other people promoting the services. There's no real discussions going on. So
Mm.
I think it's hard to find those that have a good community and not just people just spamming, selling posts. So yeah, I'll have to keep looking, I think. So how many unread emails do you have, or SMSs or texts? Are you one of those that has like 2,000, or is it just always a zero?
Oh well, I mean, in my personal business account, in my personal email account, it's probably probably a couple of thousand. But no, I'm much better with my business ones. I do try and you know, check them, if not every day, at least sort of every other day, and work my way through them. I do have a terrible habit of sort of, oh, I'll come back to that. May not get done straight away, but you know, I have to try and be strict with the business ones.
Yeah, yes, some of them are good to actually reply to. But then again, if it's important, they'll mail again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go with that. So, okay, I have a few of these quick fire questions that I like to ask, and you can answer them with just a single word if you want, or you can expand on them how much you want to. It's really up to you. But they're usually I ask the sort of almost the same questions to a lot of people, to a lot of guests here, and it's especially this first one I think is really interesting, and it is, what's a book, podcast, or a resource that you think all founders should check out?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a tricky one. That.
Mm,
Because I do listen to a lot of sort of business podcasts, but they are very niche to the sort of thing that I do. Um, I know a book that I found very inspiring was the She Means Business. It's particularly sort of aimed at, you know, female entrepreneurs. It's a book
mm,
by Carrie Green. Um, but that was very much about how you know, the positive story of how anyone can sort of turn their business dreams into reality. And that was a very inspiring book I found.
It's really good. I just looked it up on Amazon. It has 2,200 ratings and it's 4.7 average on ratings. So that's some really good ratings. What's the best advice that you ever received about running a business?
I think probably from going to Sigrun's masterclasses when she does the 12 days of masterclasses. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's an
No.
event that runs over Christmas every year, and she has lots of advice in that. But one of the interesting things she talked about when creating online courses, and it can apply to coaching programs as well, is to very much you sell it and then create it. So in other words, you have the idea, you put it out to people, and you don't actually create it until people that people actually want to buy it. Because I do have a terrible habit of getting carried away with good ideas, as sort of mentioned before, and creating it all and doing all these things, oh, isn't this wonderful? And then of course you find that no one actually wants to buy it. If you create it with the sort of initial people, then it is what people actually want. And I think that can be very important advice.
That's a really good advice. I heard about that just the other day on another podcast as well. To pre-sell your products just to see if there's a product market fit. I think what they did was they got like a bunch of orders in just the first few days. So they had to reply to them and say, actually, this product doesn't really exist yet, but we'll give you we'll give you 50% off if we can ship it when it's done, or you can have your money back. But at least they knew that it had a product market fit. So I could have used that advice a few years ago. Pre-sell your product. Yeah, that's a good one. So this your skin nutrition business, how long have you had that for now? Is it a few years? Or is it new?
Yeah, so it was it was the beginning of 2022 actually that I started doing the nutrition, and I've gradually focused in more on now. Ended up doing the skin nutrition specifically.
Nice. So you're 3 years in.
Mm.
You probably learned a lot along the way. So knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently, like along this journey?
Yes, I mean, so one of the things I did, because when I founded my skincare business, I mentioned how I procrastinated over it for years and years and years. I think it was about 8 years of
Yeah, oh, yeah,
going into every little detail of, well, I'll do it like this, we'll do it like this. And so by the time I did launch it, I had every little detail of the branding sorted out, but I'd spent way, way too long doing that. So when I then launched my nutrition business, I thought, right, I'm not going to do that. So I set myself down. I was like, right, I'm going to think of a name for the business, and I'm going to give myself, half an hour, and whatever I've come up with at the end of that, that's what it's named. That's the end of it, right? And I did that with everything. Right, you've got an hour. Design the logo. Right, go. Um, because I thought, well, I can always change that later. It doesn't matter. So I just sort of rushed in with this I feel slightly generic sort of thing, because I didn't know what my specific niche was going to be at that time.
yeah,
And I can see, there was a plus side to that. There were pros and cons, because it did mean that I was then able to start getting clients, and get experience. But of course, by the time I realised what I did want to sort of focus my niche in it's then become harder. I'm having to gradually sort of go through and start to rebrand things and start to actually make it now make sense with the niche that I've chosen. And of course, that becomes quite hard work when you've been doing it for a few years. So yeah, I think maybe I would have taken a little bit more time to actually sort of find the niche before doing that. But it is what it is.
yeah. Perfect. Well, it is. I mean, it worked out great for you, so that's perfect, right? At least you're not. At least you didn't procrastinate for years this time, which is good.
Yeah,
I think we're
yeah.
back to these like time constraints. Yeah, I think those are really good. All right, last question here for this quick fire round. What's one habit that's had the biggest impact on you as a founder?
I think time blocking probably. I do have a terrible habit of procrastinating over things, and also getting too sort of focused on one thing, So I'll start doing it and then just spend far too long doing all the little details and things um, and then you forget to do all the other important things. So I think really, looking at my calendar, I still prefer to use a little paper diary because I'm old fashioned like that, and I will go through. I was like, okay, right, so this is how long I'm going to work for, and I'm going to just do this in this hour, this in this hour, and try to be quite strict about that. I mean, yeah, there's sort of some flexibility in it, but trying to sort of to stick to that so that the important tasks do get done. I think that's really been helpful.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the time blocking, do you divide them up into like big blocks like admin or and just other work, or do you have like smaller blocks also that you divide them up into?
Yeah. It depends. So I start off by big sort of chunks. That's going to be admin. That's going to be calls and so on.
Mm.
Sometimes I will then subdivide it into smaller tasks. But I find if I get too regimented with exactly what I'm going to do in which hour, my brain starts to rebel. I don't like being told what to
Mm.
do. So I have to put in a little bit of flexibility within it just to help with that. Otherwise, the inner child comes out and rebels.
That's good. Yeah, I do the same thing. I sort of live and die by my to-do list, and I sort it by the like the hardest thing first, which I do not want to do, but I have to do that first, and then I can go into the more sort of fun things. But there's this yeah, there's some things that you don't want to do that, but you sort of have to. So I try to do them first, which I don't always do, but that's at least my theory. I try
Mm.
to. It's hard, but yeah, time
Yeah.
blocking is really good. Because as you say, I think well, everything gets just sort of just a big mess, at least in my calendar, with everything, and then nothing really happens. And then I can. It feels like I've worked all day, but I hadn't really done anything. I'm like, well, that was not a very productive day. But when I do time blocking, I actually do things. I get things done. So yeah, works great for me as well. Well, perfect. That's the quick fire rounds that I had. That's really interesting. So thank you for that. And we mentioned the summit, and we'll put that link in the description. And for people that want to read more about you, where can they find you online on social media and the website?
Yeah, so I have my website, it's journeystorycoaching.co.uk. I'm on Instagram, it's at Journey Story Coaching UK. I do have a TikTok account which I've started as well, and I do also I have a beauty channel where I make videos talking about all different areas of nutrition, and I do have a Facebook group as well, which is Eat Well, Live Well with Jenny Joy Coaching. And people can join that for all sorts of free resources. I share all kinds of nutrition tips, all those kinds of things in there.
Perfect. And we'll have all of that linked in the show notes and the description for people so they can just click on it. Okay, Kate, thank you so much for joining us. That was a good talk. Thank you, and good luck with everything.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm here. It's lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.